Thank you and good evening. Thank you, J Street. What a great turnout. This is magnificent. Thank you so much. Please have a seat. Thank you. Please have a seat. I am so honored to be with you tonight. I want to thank Jeremy for the invitation. I want to thank Mort for his leadership and kind introduction. I'm delighted to be at an event where I get to sit down and then listen to great friends like Nancy Pelosi and Madeleine Albright, to honor awardees Daniel Cole and Alexandra Staten. Thank you to your commitment as J Street to Israel, to the U.S.-Israel relationship, to peace, and to progressive Jewish values. We need you so desperately right now. We need you. I'm an Irish Catholic that is deeply committed to the U.S.-Israel relationship. I grew up in Kansas City, where politics was Harry Truman, who was still living and working at the Truman Library, and you could go as a school group and sometimes actually see him. I cut my teeth in a political climate where to be a Truman Democrat was a wonderful thing. And Harry Truman, of all of his life accomplishments, put right near at the very top of the list the fact that he had overruled the living person he most admired, George Marshall, Secretary of State, to support the recognition of the State of Israel immediately. And what a powerful moment 70 years ago this year. I am between 82 and 90% Irish, but I've been to Israel more than I've been to Ireland. I am a devout Roman Catholic, but I've been to the Western Wall more than I've been to the Vatican. In fact, I was only at the Vatican for the first time last week. And I have been a strong supporter of the U.S.-Israel relationship as a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, proud to work with J Street on so many important issues, from our memorandum of understanding reached during the Obama administration to support Israel's security, to a nuclear deal that would take off the table for the foreseeable future an Iranian nuclear weapons program that would jeopardize Israel, the United States, and other nations. We have so many speakers. I just want to be brief. President Trump, in his news conference a couple weeks ago, might have thrown U.S. policy up in the air. Since 1947, the U.S. policy has been very clear, along with the UN mandate, that there would be two states in what had formerly been Western Palestine, a Jewish state of Israel and an Arab state. There would be two states. And that has been uniform. We'll hear from one of the great architects of the more recent U.S. expression of support for that policy, Madeleine Albright, with the Oslo Accords in 1993 and 1995. And so I know that many were very surprised at President Trump's comments. Mort referred to them in the press conference the other week. A lot of editorializing about whether this is a fundamental change in the direction of U.S. policy. But I want to quote his precise words and just talk about them for a second. Precisely what President Trump said was this: I'm looking at two states and one state, and I like the one both parties like, close quote. Both parties like. I had the opportunity to ask the nominee to be ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, about those precise words. And I basically said, the U.S. can support something that both parties, Israel and Palestine, like, but we cannot support something that neither party or one party doesn't like. Would you agree with me? And he said, yes, I agree with you. And then I said, okay, fine, let's talk about two-state solution. Could you foresee any two-state solution that Israel would accept if they were not recognized and guaranteed the ability to live peacefully with a neighbor? He said, no, Israel would not accept that. And I said, so the U.S. couldn't support it either, right? And he said, absolutely. And I said, let's now talk about one state. Could you foresee any one-state solution that Palestinians could accept if they were not given full, equal legal rights in such a state? And these were David Friedman's words. And David Friedman's politics are very different than mine. He said, no, the Palestinians would never accept that. It would be, quote, an untenable and immoral construct, close quote, to expect any people to accept second-class status in a nation where they were citizens or residents. That is David Friedman's testimony. And so I said then to David Friedman, if it would be untenable and immoral, then it would never be a policy that the U.S. could accept. And he agreed. He said the U.S. could never support such a policy. We have to be realistic. The U.S. cannot dictate the terms of any other nation's internal policies. We can't. But we do have complete control over what we will support. We must support a two-state solution in which two states can live side by side in peace. And we can never support a one-state solution where people would be treated in a second-class status, fundamentally contrary to the most essential value of our nation, that all people are equal. The role of J Street at this moment is absolutely critical. There is a beautiful spiritual that we sing in my church, St. Elizabeth's Catholic Church, that, as is the case with many spirituals that are African-American spirituals, it's an Exodus story. So many of the great spirituals are Exodus stories. And a song that we sing in my church, and I won't sing it for you, I don't want to drive the audience away, but a song that we sing in my church is, "Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. The time is drawing nigh." It's about preparation. Even when we don't know when the time will be, it might be tomorrow or it might be years from now, when the opportunity to advance and get over the disappointments of stasis in the peace process. We don't know when the time will be. But we are instructed to keep our lamps trimmed and burning and have the confidence that that time will arrive. That's what J Street does. You are the upholders of the fundamental vision of Harry Truman and others from 1947 to today. You uphold it in a way that no one else does in this country. And you uphold it with momentary disappointments, but with an ultimate sense of optimism and confidence, because if the thing is right, the time eventually will be right. And two states for two people living in peace is right. And you need to uphold that, and I will look forward to doing that with you. The last thing I'll say is this. As we keep our lamps trimmed and burning and hope alive for a peace process, there's more that we need to do because of the perilous times we live in. We will keep alive that hope for dialogue, for peace and equal dignity with Israel and Palestine, but we also are called as people of values, people of faith, to speak out against anti-Semitism, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in the desecration of cemeteries, or whether it's in attempts to remove references to Jews from Holocaust memorial commemorations. We cannot allow that to go unchallenged. As people who care deeply about our faiths, we have to speak out against the diminution in the faiths of others and against Islamophobia wherever we see it in this country, wherever we see it. And we must speak out in such a clear and consistent voice against any attitude against refugees and migrants. This is why I went to the Vatican last week, and I had the opportunity, which was to me a life experience, of meeting and being in dialogue with Pope Francis, and this was the one issue we talked about: migrants and refugees. We talked about it in Spanish, and we talked about, we share this common tradition. My father was a wandering Aramaean who went down to Egypt and sojourned there and grew into a nation great and powerful. There shall be one law for the resident and the alien alike. How many references in the scriptures of our great religions are about the obligation that we have on our shoulders to be welcoming to those who are refugees, and certainly not to kick people when they are down, but when they are down is when they need us, and we must stand up and be for them. That's the test that we are living in right now. And it is not a test we can fail. In fact, it's not a test where we can allow small violations of our traditions of tolerance to go unnoticed or unchecked on the theory that, well, you know, maybe it won't happen tomorrow, or maybe they'll learn, or maybe they'll get over it. No, when we see violations of the tolerance and respect and dignity principle, it is on the shoulders of each one of us to immediately and forcefully stand and say that is not who we are as individuals, and that is not who we are as a nation. And that is something you do very, very well. So, for the opportunity that I have to serve, I was disappointed in the outcome in November, but things happen for a reason, and the only piece of the reason I figured out is that I'm supposed to be in the Senate standing up with you for the values that make this nation great. Here's the way I look at this. We have brought our constitutional democracy in for the 230-year checkup, and we're seeing whether the systems still work. The Article 1 independent Congress, the Article 3 independent judiciary, the First Amendment strong and free press, the First Amendment right of the people to peacefully assemble and petition their government for redress of grievances. We are testing out all of those important checks that were put in place, many by Virginians, to make sure that executives don't run wild. And that's what we will do as patriotic Americans for the next 4 years. With J Street, I have confidence that our system will be vindicated. We will prevail. Thank you so much.